Right, well, hi there. My name is Darren Naish. I am the host and author of the blog Tetrapod Zoology. And as those of you who follow me on social media, on Twitter and Facebook, will know, I have only just managed to get the Tetrapod Zoology YouTube channel up and running again. And there's a bunch of things I want to do here, and I might be talking about various of the toys and models I have in the collection here at Tetsu Towers. I might want to be talking about paleo art that appears in various of the books I have, and I also want to read sections from various books, including those I've written myself. And I thought I'd start, for no particular reason, by reading a segment of my cryptozoology themed book, Hunting Monsters, published by Arcturus Press in 2017. And I'm just going to read a section on the alleged modern day pterosaur of New Guinea, the Ropen, which is a remarkable beast. This is just part of the Ropen section. Based on the view of this creature endorsed by its proponents, the Ropen is a remarkable beast. It's nocturnal and large, with a wingspan typically between 5 and 7 metres, that's about 16 to 23 feet. It seemingly combines features known in several fossil pterosaurs, possessing a head crest like that of the North American Cretaceous pterosaur Pteranodon, and a long tail equipped with a vertical diamond-shaped vein at its tip like that of the German Jurassic pterosaur Rhamphorhynchus. One eyewitness identified the tiny Jurassic pterosaur Sordis from Kazakhstan as being most similar to the Ropen he saw, meaning that this fossil animal, with a wingspan of about 60 centimetres, about 24 inches, is regarded as the Ropen's specific identity by Ropen proponent Jonathan Whitcomb. Having said that the Ropen's wingspan is typically between 5 and 7 metres, so 16 to 23 feet, a supersized individual seen flying during the day in 1994 was said to have a wingspan of about 15 metres, that's 49 feet. Oh, and it's bioluminescent. It glows in the dark and leaves a glowing trace in the nighttime air as it flies along. Numerous eyewitness accounts said to describe the Ropen have been collected. A few do describe winged, long-tailed flying creatures, but a great many don't describe the Ropen at all. Instead, they describe nighttime flashes of illumination or lights seen overhead at night. Then there are those accounts in which a creature is said to have visited a grave and removed the body of a recently deceased person. In such cases, one is said to have occurred in 1949 when the Ropen was witnessed by a man living in Opai village, Umboy Island. The animal is not described, making any link with the flying pterosaur-like creature and the nighttime lights suspiciously tenuous. Evaluating living pterosaurs, a new subtitle. Apologies if you can hear the dog. I can't get him to stop barking. He's very badly behaved. He's called Teddy, and he's a West Highland Terrier. He looks like a small polar bear. What are we to make of the various living pterosaur accounts from around the world? In considering the stories from the United States and tropical Africa, some authors have proposed that pterosaurs related to Pteranodon and Quetzalcoatlus might really have survived to the present in remote regions. Another classic example of the prehistoric survivor paradigm. That's a concept that I explore in this book, Hunting Monsters. An alternative idea mooted in the paranormal literature is that animals of the past are able to move through dimensional windows and thereby appear temporarily in our own timeline. Such ideas are obviously not compatible with a view of cryptozoology that is consistent with mainstream zoology, and perhaps gives some idea of the fabulous nature of certain writings that occur around the edges of the cryptozoological canon. The possibility that pterosaurs might have survived beyond the end of the Cretaceous and into the modern day is not, in principle, impossible. But it does contradict the data we have, and it is not supported by anything other than vague and questionable eyewitness accounts. Furthermore, these sightings don't really describe animals that sound much like pterosaurs at all. They're mostly descriptions of vague winged horrors, and witnesses never describe the specific features unique to pterosaurs, such as their peculiar wing anatomy. In the most detailed of the Ropen accounts from New Guinea, the features reportedly seen by a witness were observed in an animal said to be 30 metres, about 98 feet, up in the air, meaning either that the witness, a Papuan man named Gideon Corot was lying or embellishing his account, or the interviewer was misunderstanding or misinterpreting the story. The very best Ropen accounts related so far involve substantial prompting and leading of the witnesses and a great deal of confusion over what's being claimed. In fact, some published interviews between investigator and eyewitness read like textbook examples of how not to do an interview. These eyewitness accounts are better interpreted as tall tales, hoaxes, or sightings of other things before we can begin to seriously entertain the fact that they're anything to do with a group of animals that died out 66 million years ago. Considering the supposed living pterosaur accounts of the United States, many people are not especially interested in the natural world, have little desire to read or learn about it, and receive most of their information about animals and plants via a sort of cultural osmosis. It's a fact that many prehistoric animals are surprisingly prevalent in our culture. Images of dinosaurs, pterosaurs, Dimetrodon, saber-toothed cats and mammoths are readily encountered via cartoons, movies, advertising, and the products of the toy and entertainment industry. The result is that there are a great many people who have some concept of what a pterodactyl is, yet are stunningly naive regarding the living animals that live on their own doorstep. This is a long-winded way of saying that some people are more likely to think pterodactyl on seeing a large, unfamiliar winged creature than heron, crane, or eagle. The majority of winged monster sightings are almost certainly mistaken or embellished encounters with such known species. In some parts of the world, frigate birds, shoebill storks, and large bats have probably also contributed to the myth of the living pterosaur. What of the bizarre idea that the Ropen glows at night or leaves a luminous trail as it flies? One explanation for these lights is that they're actually aircraft, and the claim has been made that the glowing Ropens do indeed travel along a route known to correspond to a flight path. The idea that people have been misidentifying small planes as giant modern-day glow-in-the-dark pterosaurs might be hard to swallow, but it's more likely than the possibility that they really are seeing giant modern-day glow-in-the-dark pterosaurs. None of the eyewitness accounts collected so far are convincing. An obvious overarching aspect of the Ropen phenomenon is its association with creationism and a religious agenda. One of the most vocal, visible champions of Ropen existence is researcher and writer Jonathan Whitcomb, who makes it very clear throughout his 2006 book Searching for Ropens that his personal belief in the Christian God and his creationism-based worldview are integral to his interest in the Ropen. Long sections of his book are devoted to disproving the possibility that evolution might have happened. He even claims to have discovered a statistical test that demonstrates it. He quotes a conversation in which I told him, a Papuan councillor / government official, of the problems we have in America because some disbelieve in God, and I mentioned how finding Ropens could help. Whitcomb is of course entitled to hold whatever views he wishes on issues of faith, as are we all. The point is that this proselytizing, I knew I'd struggle with that word. The point is that this proselytizing does nothing to further the case for the Ropen's existence and only serves to show that the author has a heavily biased worldview and agenda. This links to an issue obvious throughout the cryptozoological literature written by creationists. People of faith, missionaries, pastors, members of congregations and so on are consistently treated as trustworthy, reliable tellers of anecdotes, whereas they may not be, and may in fact be consistently less reliable, especially when speaking with an exotic visitor who identifies religious motive as the reason for their visit. The poor quality of the evidence aside, the most obvious issue surrounding ideas about surviving sauropods, pterosaurs and other ancient beasts is that all the creatures concerned, all of them, precisely match the artistic depictions of decades past. The Makila Mbembe does not resemble the way we think sauropods really looked, a view based on copious good fossil evidence, much of it only discovered and published within the last 2 decades. It is instead a carbon copy of sauropod portrayals of the early 1900s, of a time when sauropods were incorrectly imagined to be aquatic animals that spent their time submerged in lakes and swamps. Similarly, those living pterosaurs of the cryptozoology literature are not the sleek, furry, attractive beasts consistent with recently discovered fossils. Rather, they are dark, naked, leathery winged monsters, copies of the inaccurate reconstructions of decades past. The whole phenomenon of living sauropods and living pterosaurs consists, therefore, of cultural anachronisms, not zoological ones. This makes sense given the early 20th century genesis of the idea, in a time when the lost world meme became so popular in science fiction and so appealing to authors of romantic inclination. An inaccurate colonial view of the tropics and its biology and people were the ideal setting for what would prove to be an outdated and anachronistic view of prehistoric survivors, none of which ever really existed, and all of which are beloved of creationists with their biased, agenda-driven motives. That is from the 5th chapter of Hunting Monsters, the chapter specifically devoted to Makila Mbembe, the Ropen and other prehistoric survivors. Hunting Monsters is for sale at $7.99. It's got a few mistakes in it that I really would like to catch in a later edition, some fairly embarrassing typos and errors in logic. Some of the ideas that I promote in the book, I'm not saying that I'm necessarily wedded to. I do expect to change them down the line. I mean, any book that promotes something like, your take on mystery animals is obviously bound to change as more evidence comes in. And I don't necessarily mean by that I'm going to change my view on whether cryptids exist. I mean I'm going to change the way in which I interpret the writings of the people who think that some of these cryptids exist. It's a fairly complicated subject, really. It's probably less to do with zoology and more to do with, cultural anthropology, sociology. So I'll be interested to see, how many people watch this video, and that will guide me as to whether I produce any more similar readings or similar kinds of videos. Let me know. Click like in the comments, as they say on YouTube, and subscribe if you haven't done so already, should you want to. And I need a new headset because this one is badly fitting. It's very uncomfortable on my ears, and it looks really goofy. But thanks very much for listening, for watching, and see you again soon. Bye bye now.